everyone, and welcome to another episode of In the Studio. I'm your host, Lynn Weaver, and the program is brought to you by Davis Media Access and broadcast on Davis Community Television. That's Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T UVerse Menu 99. We're also online at dctv.davismedia.org and on YouTube. Now, today I have the pleasure to have with me a very special guest who comes from very, very far away. But before I tell you more about this very special guest, I have to point out that Davis is famous for the diversity of its inhabitants. And it's a melting pot of culture, ethnicity, and different nationality. And as a result, everybody wants to live in this very vibrant town. So the guest I have tonight is Nathalie Minya. She's coming to from Africa, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time that that you're taking to come to this show. And we're going to talk about a lot of nice things. Nathalie is a wife and a mother of two beautiful children, a boy of 5 and a girl of 2. She's also a director of the board for the International House here in Davis, as well as a member of the Sunrise Rotary in Davis also. And last but not least, she is a clothes designer and a motivational speaker. She has a degree in business, and she tours schools and events, giving speeches to motivate women especially, but everybody, to make this world a much better place. Welcome again, Nathalie.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Now, I wanted to mention that growing up in Zimbabwe, a young girl in a family of 8, you often heard the words, "you cannot." And that's why you made it into your life story to risk and to improve and enhance all the qualities that you have within you. And you told me that at age 15, you discovered some skills within yourself that changed basically your life and in some ways contributed to enhancing your family. So tell us about that. What were your skills?
Thank you. Well, as you said, I grew up in Zimbabwe, and by the time I was 15, I was in a home. My mom was a widow, and she had 4 children to take care of. And even though she had gone to school and was educated, life was still very hard for her. And so at that time in my life, I thought, what can I bring to the table? What can I do to help my mother? And I loved clothes. I loved modeling. And I started by making clothes for myself while I was modeling, and many people admired them. And I began making clothes for friends. And then soon enough, it became a business. I started making clothes for different competitions, Miss Zimbabwe, which is similar to Miss USA, yes. Miss Malaika, which is a regional African contest, and different things like that. So I found myself getting more and more popular and making money and helping my mom. It was an amazing journey, and still to this day is still something amazing.
Yes, well, you're wearing something beautiful.
Thank you. But one of the biggest breaks for me that probably brought me here was one of my friends was wearing a very extravagant design of mine, and a prominent government official's daughter saw it, and she said, "I need someone to design a wedding dress like that."
In Zimbabwe.
In Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And of course, I took up the challenge, even though I was still 17 and wasn't sure if I could do it. And I pulled it off, made her what I thought was a gorgeous gown, and she loved it. And she paid me quite a bit of money, the most money I had ever seen at that time. And it helped me pay for my air ticket. My mom as well helped and got me to the United States to study business and then later an MBA.
That's fabulous, and we're going to talk a little more about your when you first came to United States and the adventures you had. But before we do that, let's show some of your creations, if you like. We'll wait until they display. So this is one, and this is you made this.
Yes. This is an African-inspired. My whole thing is to kind of merge Western wear and African wear, and so you can see it's like a Western strapless wedding gown, and she has as African beads as her necklace instead of the usual pearls, and an African headdress that's most commonly worn in South Africa to complement it, and that's kind of what I like. I want to African designs that anyone in the world can wear and appreciate.
Yes, yes. Well, it's very creative.
Thank you.
Let's see. Now this one is that you?
This is not me. This is a model, and I wish it was me. And she was wearing, again, I love weddings, and for whatever reason, it was also inspired by an evening event or an evening reception, wedding of some sort. And so I just thought I always loved the big headdresses, something in your hair. I love women's hats. And I just thought that this would complement well. The back of this dress is this bright blue. I wish the picture reflected it, but and it has a big tail. I like extravagant, and I also, again, there's that mix of African and Western wear.
Western wear, which is very nice. Now this is something else. I'm not too sure if the model is lying down or standing up.
I think she's standing up or posing, but this is one of my very, very early designs. I just a mix of gold and blue. I just loved colors, and I play around with them and play around with off-shoulder styles, and this is just something I enjoy.
It's very, very nice.
Oh, and that's the front, and it's short on one side and long on the other side, so I definitely want to go for the extravagant look. I want someone to turn again, and this was just right at the beginning of my career. This girl is a beautiful girl in Zimbabwe that was my model, and
well, the mantle is very pretty. This little mantle is really nice. Do we have anything else to show? Oh yes, this is interesting. I was waiting for that.
Yes, so this is my home in Zimbabwe. I lived in the city in Harare, and you can see there's me and my sisters and brothers. We were 8 in our family, and you can guess there's a couple more children in there. This is just the culture in Zimbabwe. There's always somebody else's child in your home, and so we always had more than 8 children in this house. And so, the rest are just some stray kids, some neighbors, kids, and cousins, and that just was the community, and still is, that people can still send off their kids to play, and they'll come back before dark.
So it's a wonderful culture in some way. If it weren't for the lack of resources and the lack of education, sometimes
in some cases,
in some cases. Well, I want to move on to your other skills and careers. And when we spoke, I was enchanted by what you said when you first came to the United States, the culture shock that you had.
Indeed.
Now, I have to point out that it wasn't Davis. You arrived, you applied for a position at a university in Missouri, and so you flew.
Yes, so I applied for a position. In actual fact, I applied anywhere in the U.S. Everyone's dream is to come to the United States. So I had no idea where I was going. I knew nothing about it except, well, this is America. Surely everywhere is like New York. So I always laugh that the difference is in Africa, everyone thinks USA is like New York. Yes. And then from USA, everyone thinks Africa is the village where kids are dying. And it's, there's that as well. But there's also the city that's thriving. I say as a teenager, I'd go bowling, watch movies, things that people don't even know we do. And so, so that was the culture shock for me to land at Kansas City Airport. And my school was really far away, 2 hours away from the airport. And I always joke that I went with my whole $300 US, my whole life saving, thinking this will be good for me for a year. And the very first day, that super shuttle was the only bus that went to the school had left me. And first of all, I saw cows and cowboys, and I was, where am I? I didn't know there are cows and cowboys in America. And this air hostess was kind enough to find me the cheapest hotel. I told her, I don't have a lot of money, so find me the very cheapest place, which ended up being Super 8, and that's still $68. And I bought a pizza for 20. So by the end of my first night, I was already down a third of my income. And so that was a culture shock in itself. You know, we come from Africa and we see all these very charitable Americans give a lot, and you somewhat assume that like life is easy in America and everyone is just got money flowing everywhere. And we used to joke that from Zimbabwe, my dream was to pick dollar bills that people threw on the floor in the US. And as soon as I came, I said, where are the dollar bills? I don't.
So you went to the international office and asked.
And I asked, please, can I have a job? And she's laughing. It's your first day. I know.
But then, of course, and how long ago was this?
Goodness me, this was 10 years. I've been in the US for 10 years.
Well, that isn't. I mean, it is a long time. But,
yeah, it is. It is. And I think the other culture shock was that I didn't realize how much of Africa people didn't know. And of course, this is a small town in Missouri, and many of the community, which were very lovely and pleasant and welcoming, had never experienced anyone from Africa, knew nothing except for the TV and the solicitation for donations. And so people would ask me, do you have a toy lion in Zimbabwe in your backyard? No, I don't have a lion. Do you have a washing machine? Do you live in a tree house?
Oh, my goodness.
And at first I was almost offended, but then I realized I'm the only I'm the only picture of Zimbabwe they'll ever see. So I started treating myself as an ambassador, and so there was no question that was wrong. I would just treat it like I haven't.
And a wonderful ambassador. And a wonderful ambassador. Now, you got a degree and then an MBA as well. Yes. And then you met your husband in the United States through a friend.
Through a friend.
And what brought you to Davis then?
In actual fact, from Missouri, my husband was in Portland, Oregon, and that's where I did my MBA. And we met through a friend. He was still finishing off his PhD, and I guess it went well. And 2 years later, we got married, and I moved to Portland. And when he was done there was an opportunity at UC Davis for him to be a postdoc. We took it, and we moved ourselves, our U-Haul truck, and a 5-month-old baby to, again, another adventure where we didn't know anyone.
What was your first impression of Davis? Obviously, it was a little bit different from Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in Marshall, Missouri, where people would go for lunch or whatever is McDonald's, and if it was special, it would be Applebee's. So definitely, when I got to Davis, there's a lot more choice. Davis folks are very conscious of their health, which I loved. There's a lot of parks, which we thought was great, and
of course there were other Africans.
There were a few other Africans, yes. But so I thought, oh, this is still somewhat of a small town, but definitely very different, you know.
Yes. Yes. Well, was it difficult to make friends when you came?
Well,
of course, you had 2 very small children.
I had one at the time.
You had one.
You know, I think because we found a great church community, Discovery Christian Church in Davis, that it was easy for me to kind of have people that check up on us and find out, hey, do you need a ride somewhere? And then, of course, I went straight to the International House and I said, put me to work. You know, I found somewhere to volunteer, and that helped me also get into community, and I did Rotary. So I almost feel like it would have probably been a challenge for me to make friends if I hadn't plugged myself into different like organized groups.
Yes, yes.
Because I said sometimes at the park it's hard to make friends. People somewhat are polite, and they're not, you know, they don't want to intrude. So
they're very reserved.
Very
sometimes.
reserved.
Very reserved. Yes.
No one has asked me about a pet lion yet.
Well, also I have to tell our viewers that you are a celebrity at the International House, because every year now for several years you've been organizing a wonderful international fashion show. Fashion shows with dances and music from all over the world. And that itself, the organization is very, very complex.
Thank
you.
It's
been very famous, and actually the International House has every October at the Veteran Memorial.
And now it's in Central Park.
This year was in Central Park. They have this marvelous one-day free event, and the international show is really a success.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed doing it, and like you said, Davis has a lot of cultures in different countries.
Yes,
and you almost don't notice it until we do something like that. So I think at one show we had over 100 people from 60 different countries.
Oh my goodness, incredible! So, tell us. You once said that the best things in life are free.
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Well, I've had a very interesting life, and I've lived very well, and I've also lived very poor. And so I've just realized that the only constant in my life has been the people around me, friendships, laughing and dancing and enjoying life. And those things are all free. There's nothing that money can buy that has brought me good joy. I think all the joy that I've had having children and meeting different people from all over the world, that's all free. So that's what I always think. The best things in life are really free, you know.
You mentioned that growing up in Zimbabwe was not so easy sometimes. Was it lack of education? Was it lack of a stable family life? Was it the political environment? Tell us about it.
Sure. Well, my father was a medical doctor.
Yes.
My mother was a biochemist, so they had both actually had gone to, somebody had sponsored both of them to go to school. So I am second generation benefit of somebody helping two children to go to school. But the interesting part about my life, and their story actually that ended up being my life, is that through different circumstances and through other cultural reasons, my father ended up having another wife because, first of all, it's legal to marry more than one wife in Zimbabwe.
In Zimbabwe, yes.
Yes, and second of all, there's a lot of cultural responsibility. So when a man impregnates a woman, there's a lot of cultural expectations that you do marry that person. And so we found ourselves in this situation where, you know, we lived in this great big house, and my two moms lived on one side of the house, and 8 children lived on the other side of the house, and we really never asked questions. We saw them get along, and that was our normal, right? But that was short-lived because when I was 4, my father at 38 years old died of meningitis. And
he contracted it from one of his patients.
Yes, and it was 5 days and he was gone.
38.
Yes,
he was 38,
he was
and you were 4.
I was 4, and my youngest brother was a month old. Yes, and so that in itself was very tough, obviously, for these 2 women. My stepmother was in the army, and my mother was a biochemist, but in the same respect, they had very much depended on my father to provide, and they had found themselves being pressured to get into another polygamous marriage to be kept, you know, well.
Yes.
And they came together and they decided, you know, our husband has passed away. Let's be strong for our children. Let's raise our children. When we get to a stage where we can move out of this house, then we will. And for 7 years, we all lived in this home. And now that I'm a mother and a wife, I just just think these two women were amazing and my role models, because who can do that, you know?
Yes.
But they found that they needed each other. They were educated enough to come together and say, we don't need to be in other marriages that could possibly lead to AIDS and you know, other things. Let's help each other. And they did, and they got along. As far as I knew, they looked they dealt with everything. They were happy, we were happy.
They had higher priorities.
They had higher priorities.
Yes.
And so I'm
Yes.
always pushing for educating girls.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, your mom and your stepmom must have been very intelligent as well as very strong women, like often women in developing countries or in Africa are, I
Yes.
think, because it's sort of like they take care of the children, they take care of the food, they in a lot of ways. So, but that is an incredible story, and you have survived it beautifully.
Yes.
Let's talk about why you want to be, why are you a motivational speaker, and what are your goals in doing that?
Thank you. Well, currently I'm a mom of two.
Yes.
And for my parents, my mom, to see that being educated was her only way out of poverty, out of another relationship that wouldn't turn well, was inspirational to me. First of all, it wanted me to, she had a master's degree. I wanted to have a master's degree. I want to do a PhD. She made me push for more. And I thought, oh my goodness, what about the girls out there that aren't second generation benefit of education? What am I going to do to give back to Zimbabwe and to give back to these girls? And so I started a nonprofit, Tessa Foundation, off of my website,
Yes.
NathalieMinya.com.
Yes, and maybe we can display that at the end of the program.
Yeah, and I just want to bring education to girls. Some of them I know personally. Some were kids that I played with in the street. Some are now moms that are struggling to get their girls through school. And so it's a very personal journey for me, and I feel like it's my responsibility to give back where I benefited. And if it not been for these two women educating me, I wouldn't be where I am. And so I feel like my children have free education in America. Children right now in Zimbabwe pay to go to school no matter how poor you are. Even a uniform, they have to wear uniforms. They pay for a uniform. And so if you don't have a uniform, you can't go to school. And it seems somewhat unfair. And I thought a uniform costs $10. And here I am. That's 2 Starbucks cups, which I love. And so what can I do to
So do
make
you
a
think the
difference?
culture is an obstacle in Zimbabwe, or is it the culture that is a spin-off from colonialism, do you think?
There is bits and bits of everything. So we have such a wide gap in Zimbabwe. A lot of people only know of poor Zimbabwe. There's a lot of rich Zimbabwe, but there's no middle class. So there's a lot of people that are wealthy, but there's a lot more people, of course, that are poor. And there really isn't much of a middle class. And that's a big problem, again, stemming from colonialism, like you said. And then we have the cultural situation where we're taught that boys are more important, or boys need to go to school to take care of their families. And then one day you'll be married off and well taken care of by a doctor someday. And so just educating our parents, educating the girls to believe and dream for themselves that they can be anything that they wanted to be. If you had told me at 15, when I was 8 years old in Zimbabwe, that I would one day at 15 design clothes and meet Oprah, I would have told you you're joking.
You met Oprah?
Yes.
When she came to Zimbabwe?
Well, that's a long story, but because of the work that I was
Make
doing...
it very short.
Okay. Because of the work that I was doing in Zimbabwe when I came here in the United States in college, Oprah had her people came to shoot a small interview in Davis to talk about women around the world, and she invited me over to Chicago to meet her personally for her grand finale, the last show.
Oh.
And it just kind of sparked to me the importance of having a dream and teaching girls to dream big, and that it just starts with something small like going to school and being told it's not only boys that go to school. school. Even girls go to school.
That's
know,
right.
And
That's
even
right.
girls do even better. You can be anything you want to be. It's equal power, and you
have a daughter.
Go for it.
And
I have
you're
a
the
daughter.
perfect mom for
Oh,
her.
thank you.
Switching very briefly, we don't have too much time, but we're coming up to the holidays here in the United States. And I was just curious whether in which way you celebrate you're Christian, and so do you celebrate it in the same way as we do with Christmas and New Year, or is there a difference?
So actually in Zimbabwe, everyone celebrates Christmas, even if you're not Christian, because they shut off pretty much the whole country, the whole month. Industries shut off
the
beginning
whole month of December?
Especially industries between December 1 and 5, everything is slowing down. By the time you get to December 10, everyone is in a festive mood. So it's very festive. You don't see any Christmas lights. A lot of people can't afford that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But just the joy in people's streets and the excitement that for a whole month, we're just celebrating. It's kind of the end of the year. First of all, you get a bonus. Every single person gets a bonus. So they have a little bit of money to spend and to buy groceries. And unfortunately, kids do not get presents.
Oh.
You maybe get your uniform bought for the year, or a pair of shoes, but there's no such thing as the array of presents I see here. And so, when growing up, I thought, well, this, oh my gosh, we don't have much, but realizing it was such an amazing thing for me, because we really focused on each other, because that's what we have.
Yes.
So we had a feast, we danced, and we just had fun. We always dance at every gathering, whereas at Christmas, even
you
a funeral.
dance and sing beautifully.
Thank you. And in fact, I said at International House, I want to do a taste of African Christmas. So this Christmas, September 27 at International House, I'm doing a taste of an African Christmas, which means we'll just have a big potluck and African music to dance to, because I just want people to taste a little bit.
Did you say September or no?
Sorry,
December.
December 27.
December 27. Perfect. I'll make sure that I can.
Thank you.
I'll try to be there.
Yes, we celebrate Christmas. Again, you said we celebrate Christmas on the 25th, and then we have 26th is Boxing Day.
Oh,
it's
yes,
another
of course,
holiday.
it's the British.
Yes,
the British.
We celebrate Boxing Day and then New Year's. So really, for the month of December, we're off.
Well, I'm afraid our time is up, and I enjoyed very much getting to know you a little more, and thank you again for coming on our show. And Nathalie, Minya, motivational speaker, clothes design, important member of our community. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, all of you, for watching. If you'd like to see this show again, you can go to dctv.davismedia.org. And while you're there, perhaps you want to check some of our other programs. We're also on YouTube, so we're also downloadable. So if you go and search in the studio on YouTube, you'll find all of our episodes. So you've been watching In the Studio. From all of us here at Davis Media Access, thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.